7 episodes in, Dandadan finally has my complete undivided attention. You need to watch this season's hidden gem and it's not what you think it is. The Attack on Titan movie had an interesting end credit scene, and the Fire Force manga is genuinely one of the most ambitious things I've ever read. Welcome back to another episode of This Week in Anime. Make sure to subscribe.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about.
Dandadan, the show that the entire world is obsessed with. Let's talk about it for a second. Now, as some of you might know, I wasn't fully sold on the show for the longest time. I tried reading the manga a while back, but I gave up almost immediately, and while yes, the anime looks and sounds good and is therefore fairly enjoyable, there was something missing. It was a fun show, I think we can all agree on that, but to me it felt like just that, just like a fun show and nothing else. It was weird, especially because I had a hard time pinpointing my exact issues with the show, but fear not, ladies and gentlemen, mostly gentlemen based on my YouTube analytics, I have finally managed to articulate my gripe with the show. It's almost like it's my job, and thankfully the show has already fixed it, or at least it's trying to. Let's start with the problem itself and then go over how a single episode, just one, fixed most of it. Here's my problem. I think this show suffers, or more like suffered, from what I like to call the Chainsaw Man syndrome, which is fitting because Dandadan mangaka Yukinobu Tatsu was an assistant to Tatsuki Fujimoto. What is the Chainsaw Man syndrome, you may ask? It's when an anime is actually creative. No, it's the phenomena of a show being too chaotic. I'm not the biggest Chainsaw Man manga fan, I know, burn me at the stake, and it looked like this series was going down a similar path, but thankfully that might not be the case. Let me elaborate. Also, no more Chainsaw Man comparisons. It was just an example, it's not really relevant. Put down the pitchforks, alright? That part's over. Dandadan opened up with a series of eccentric, over-the-top episodes with breakneck pacing. Also, by pacing, I mean the speed at which the story progresses and not the number of chapters being adapted per episode. It hit you with a barrage of stylish, enjoyable and yet ultimately superficial events. Okarun finally befriended someone? That sounds wholesome. There was something so endearing about his awkward mannerisms. Sure hope the show doesn't undercut it in favor of unfunny comedy and action. The show has a vibrant supernatural component? That sounds interesting. Sure hope the story doesn't incorporate it into weird, unsavory story beats. The seemingly goofy villain has a surprisingly heartfelt history, one about her showing up in places where girls were abused and killed. Sure hope the male lead doesn't bite her tits against her will. That last one genuinely made me do a double take. It was an insane thing to do, especially given Turbo Granny's lore. Create a character to highlight a mature theme like SA, calm down demonetization man, and have the male lead gain an upper hand by essaying her. What the hell? Ignoring that last bit, the show basically took a bunch of interesting ideas and concepts and gave them no room to breathe, none whatsoever. Not everything was fast-paced, of course, but except for like this one scene, the show felt like a countdown to the next high-octane fight. Some countdowns were simply longer than others. It wasn't leaving a lasting impression on me. It was the TV anime equivalent of fast food, momentarily enjoyable but not really memorable. Here's the thing, chaos is fun, but if everything is chaotic, chaos becomes the norm and nothing is chaotic anymore. I think I used that exact sentence to describe Chainsaw Man at one point, so much for me not comparing the two anymore. To put it in Dandadan terms, if everything is supernatural, supernatural becomes natural and nothing is super anymore. If the show continued to go down this wacky spirit of the week, I just overdosed on caffeine and I have ADHD path, it would have ended up being a somewhat enjoyable but ultimately forgettable experience, but thankfully it didn't. Remember what I said about the show fixing the problem I had? Well, let's talk about that. My all-around favorite episode from this show so far is episode 5. It's the slowest episode in terms of pure pacing and it contains next to nothing supernatural, but that's what makes it so good. And I know what that sounds like. The show is good only when it's not doing any of the things it's known for, but that's not my point. This episode did a lot of things that complemented the overall ideas of the story. By slowing things down, it allowed the dynamic between the lead characters to develop. It provided the audience with some much needed breathing room. It allowed the events of the past 4 chaotic episodes to sink in, and it made the characters more endearing by grounding them in reality. That last point is particularly important. Episode Episode 5 re-established the fact that both Momo and Okarun are regular high school kids with very regular lives and regular feelings, assuming you can call being this much of a loner regular. By grounding the characters, the show hammers in the dichotomy between their lives and the irregularity of the supernatural. The show basically went, you saw all that wild stuff, now see how the characters usually live their lives, and by extension, infer how out of their element they must have felt during the previous 4 chaotic episodes. I might be reading into this too much, but I think this change in pace was needed, and so was this change in tone. Trust me, constant chaos sounds fun, but it's not what you want. You might think you want it, but trust me, you don't. Also, even outside of that pretentious drivel, the episode was just fun, was it not? It was like your typical high school slice of life rom-com, and high school slice of life rom-coms are one of the best things to happen to the medium of anime. So yes, I wasn't fully on board the Dandadan train, but once episode 5 came out, I was sold. If the show can keep up this sensible style of pacing and storytelling, I'm sure I'll end up loving it. It'll end up being more than just a momentary source of enjoyment. Also, I like how the cast is relatively small. There are so many shows that overestimate their ability to write entertaining characters and introduce way too many people early on. All things considered, Dandadan is headed down the right path, and I sincerely hope it keeps this up. I really do. The hidden gem of the season. You need to watch it. Now, many of you might think I'm referring to Mechanical Arms, and while yes, it is very good and severely underrated, this section is about You Are Miss Servant or Kimi wa Meido-sama, because the former is one of the worst translated titles ever. On what planet does Meido translate to servant and not maid? This show is fun. That's it. That's the anime. It's genuinely so wholesome and comforting. I am a manga reader and I did enjoy the first few dozen chapters, but I think the anime outdoes it in decisive fashion, all while not doing all that much. It's just that the anime format allows the show to slow things down and build that fluffy atmosphere better than the manga. I don't usually talk about voice acting, but I need to highlight Reina Ueda's performance as Yuki because it really stood out to me. I've heard plenty of that pleasant anime girl 101 cadence that's common, but this is something special. I don't know, I lack the technical knowledge needed to break this down, but something about her vocal inflections and tone of voice, it is a part of my brain I didn't know I had. It does something to my ears. I just realized this entire section sounds weird. Visually, it's not too insane, but it does the job. Also, good god. Wait, no, hold on, let me check. Oh great, where was I? That's right, good god. Watch it, especially if you like the slice of life genre.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
The Attack on Titan movie came out in Japan, and I wanted to talk about it for a second. I haven't seen it, obviously this is not Japan, but at the same time, I have, because of course it's a recap. The movie itself isn't the point of interest, it's not really relevant. The point of interest is the end credit scene. By the way, these aren't spoilers, the official AOT Twitter account posted these. The end credit scene featured the AOT school cast's cast, and between this and that one Easter egg in part 2 episode 3, I simply fail to understand why they haven't announced a school cast's anime already. What's stopping them? We know the name Attack on Titan still does numbers. The movie, despite being a recap and having a limited release, topped the Japanese box office. We know it'll be good because come on, it's Isayama, and we know the fans want it. Come on, Pony Canyon or Production IG or whoever else is in charge of this stuff. Do it. I missed the show, do it. The school cast manga is fun, but if you really pay attention, you'll notice that it's a bit more than that. If adapted, it can serve as a wonderful companion piece to the main story. Just adapt it already. There isn't enough material for a whole season? Make an OVA then. Get someone to extrapolate, I don't know, do something. Do it.
Gaslight gatekeep girl boss, get out of my station.
Over the past couple of weeks, I read 2 very different manga. Firstly, March Comes In Like a Lion. I didn't remember the anime all that well, so I read it from front to back, and it was a mixed bag. I loved the first 100 or so chapters. I could get behind the leads. The wholesome moments were, well, wholesome, and even the more uncomfortable story beats felt purposeful and calculated. The only negative up until that point was how insanely boring boring shogi is. Like seriously, I'd rather watch paint dry. Of course, the fact that I can't actually play the thing doesn't help. The manga did try to explain, but I'm afraid it has too many rules. Still, it was an enjoyable read. I was particularly fond of the drama near the midway point. That whole story arc featuring the sisters' father. And then things kinda fell apart, I can't lie. The story crammed a romantic subplot down my throat and it didn't feel deserved or necessary. In fact, it's something the story made fun of a few chapters prior. Also, and this is a major issue, I feel like the story should have been presented in a more protagonist-centric manner, since so much of it revolves around Ray and since he is so much more interesting than the rest of the cast. Except for his sister, she is great too. I feel like the story should have given less page time to other significantly less interesting side characters. The fact that insert middle-aged shogi player here got more attention than Kyoko is criminal. All in all, the second half of it was a bit confused, but overall it was a good read. The other manga I read was Fire Force, and there won't be any spoilers here. Unlike March Comes In Like a Lion, I actually remembered the anime quite well, mainly because I revisited it while making the Fire Force video. Check it out, by the way. I wasn't asking, go watch it, I can see you. Watch the video or you'll live to regret it. I'm not playing, I swear to The Fire Force ending was genuinely one of the most ambitious things I've ever read. I've never seen a shonen handle surrealism this well, it was incredible. Now, I'm not one of those, oh, shonen is for kids, go read Vinland Saga types, but I genuinely felt like Fire Force was being severely restricted by the demographic it was trying to be a part of. On one hand, you have extremely creative, surreal, and reality-bending concepts, and on the other, you have generic shonen cliche 101, and these two hands shouldn't belong to the same person. Back to the ending, Okubo really went for it. That man swung for the satellites. You have high stakes endings and then you have whatever the hell was going on in those final few chapters. Again, I won't spoil it, but if you are tired of waiting for the anime, I highly recommend giving the manga a go, especially because of how up in the air the status of the third season is. And that just about does it. Liked the video? Check out this other bit of content on screen, like and subscribe, and until next time,